Hello, welcome to Coffee and Astronomy. I'm Jim Craig, and this week I want to talk about the excitement. You can call it being starstruck, moonstruck, planet struck. But that excitement you feel the first time you look through a telescope. Somebody was asking about that recently. Like, what event was it that really got you excited about astronomy? And mine occurred on a summer evening back in 1987. And I had this really awful telescope. And, I thought it was great. But, a little 2.5 inch reflector, which ought to tell you, not a great scope. Acrylic eyepieces, terrible flimsy mount. But I pointed it at a point of light in the sky because I'd looked in Astronomy magazine or Sky and Telescope magazine, one of the two. And it told me that that was Saturn. So I thought, I'll give it a try. And by the standards I hold today, the view was probably awful. But it was Saturn. And I could see the rings. And I couldn't see the gap in the rings, but I could see that you had the ball of the planet with the rings around it. And it made quite an impression on me. And it was that moment of this little tiny spot of light in the sky is now something I can see. And Saturn stopped being this abstraction that, picture in a book or on a magazine or on a computer screen. It became a place. It became more real to me than it had ever been before. And it really rekindled my passion for astronomy. And a few months later, I bought what I considered to be a better telescope. And the view was better, but it was still a pretty awful telescope. It was distributed through Montgomery Ward's company I don't think exists anymore, but it was one of those department stores that also had a catalog. And I went in and bought one of those. I think I may have paid around $70 for it. But it got my interest in astronomy going enough that I started learning my way around the sky a little bit more. Started learning constellations, that sort of thing. I went looking for some deep sky objects, had no luck at all. I think the only deep sky object I ever saw with that particular scope was the Orion Nebula. And I could make out the four stars of the trapezium and some of the nebula around them. And even as small as that view was, as awful as that view was, it was still enough to really kindle that excitement. A few months later, I went to work at a planetarium. And we, had the artificial sky with the slide projectors and all of that. But we also had some really nice telescopes. And I got to see some of these items through great telescopes, which just fired me up even more. And after a year and a half of that, I went back to college. But one of the things that I did at the planetarium, and I've done over the years, are what are called star parties. And star parties where a bunch of people get together with their telescopes, go out in a field, preferably someplace dark, but also accessible to the public. And we look at stuff in the sky and we share it with other people. And that is a truly exciting thing. Recently we had the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter. And, this is something that's not going to happen again in my lifetime. And we went to a friend's house because she has a really good view of the southwest sky. And we were able to get both of them into a fairly, they were so close together I could see both of them. It was the first time I've ever seen two planets in the same telescope at the same time. And it was pretty exciting, and it was nice to share with her. But it was just before the holidays, or it was during the holidays. And the letter carrier was running late, so it was after dark when her letter carrier showed up. And, he asked, what were you doing up there? And we invited him up. And I'd been using a camera in the scope, but I pulled the camera out, put in the eyepiece, and focused it. And I pointed over to the sky, and you could see that Jupiter and Saturn were still two very separate objects, but they were very close together. Then he looked through the telescope, and he said those three words that I love to hear, because when you look at something like Saturn and Jupiter through a telescope, people always will say those three words. They'll look in the eyepiece, they'll look up at the sky, they'll look in the eyepiece again, then they'll turn and look at you and say, "Is that real?" And that moment and his excitement were palpable. You could just feel his excitement. He'd never seen anything like that. I opened up a world to him that he'd imagined, but he'd never seen. And it got him really excited. And I've had that feeling at several occasions over the years. Saturn, in my opinion, Saturn does it more than just about anything else. But you get a nice globular cluster, especially in a dark sky or a really gorgeous nebula. You can still get that same feeling from people. And to me, that's what this is all about, is it's opening up the universe. John Dobson, the telescope maker and sort of guru to so many of us over the years, he reminded us that 95% of the people on this planet have never seen anything through a telescope or binoculars. And anybody, to see the moon, the planets, nebulae, that sort of thing, most people have never seen those sorts of things. And so you're opening them up and bringing them into this exclusive club that is working to be inclusive. And it's not intentionally exclusive. People just don't have access. So if you have a telescope and the ability to share it with people, give that a try. I realize that with the shutdown and all that, it's kind of difficult. And you do have to be careful because viruses can be transmitted. So make sure that they don't touch their eye to the eyepiece, and make sure they don't grab hold of the telescope. One of the accessories that I use when I do star parties is a step ladder, because kids will climb up, or kids, when they go to the telescope, their first instinct is they want to grab hold of something to steady themselves. And so what they do is they reach for that eyepiece. And of course they reach that eyepiece, they've moved the telescope and it's no longer aiming at what you want them to see. So I have a stepladder. It has a top rail, and I tell them, put your hands here and then move your eye close to the eyepiece. And I have less problem with kids moving the telescope around. But it's great to show to kids, but the reaction from adults is really amazing. Had a star party with a small club that unfortunately is no longer around. Miss those guys. But the woman told me that we had, again, another great view of Saturn. She said it was the most amazing thing she had ever seen. So share that with other people. Even if it's just your family. If you've got the ability to point a camera in there, whether it's from your phone or a nice camera that's designed specifically for doing astronomy, and you can share it, then do that. Share that excitement. Show people the universe is nothing like what you see out a window on a sunny afternoon. If you enjoy the talks that I give here, my sort of train of thought, or it's a kind of free association thing that I do, then you can support us by going to patreon.com, Planet of Mystery. That's patreon.com/planet_of_mystery. And for as little as $1 a month, you can help support these videos. You can get exclusive content, and you can get access to me. By the way, I don't do it often enough. I do need to publicly thank the patrons who have helped me bring these videos to you for all of these weeks. And I can't do it without you folks. I do appreciate it. So until next week, this is Jim Craig with Coffee and Astronomy, telling you, get out there, take a look, and share it with other folks. So long.